Welcome to Rye View's special 4-part series on substance abuse. Substance abuse has been a critical concern in a countless number of communities, and our wonderful city of Rye has not been immune to its harmful and tragic outcomes. Our expert guest for this episode is Ginger Katz, who is the founder of the Courage to Speak Foundation and author of Sunny's story, How to Save a Young Life from Drugs. The Courage to Speak Foundation was founded after the death of Ginger's 20-year-old son, Ian, from an accidental overdose from heroin and Valium.
Ginger has shared her story with over 1 million people in over 1,000 presentations across the nation. With teams of experts in the field of substance abuse, Ginger developed the Courage to Speak drug prevention education curricula, which includes distinctive programs for elementary, middle and high schools, along with the Courage to Speak Courageous Parenting 101 to educate parents on how to keep their children safe. Ginger has received numerous awards for her life's work that is dedicated to providing support groups, programs and services in order to save families from the tragic effects of addiction. We are grateful to Ginger for appearing on Rye Views.
We're here today with Ginger Katz from Norwalk, Connecticut. Ginger is the writer and author of Sunny's story, when she's the founder of the Courage to Speak, which is an organization she developed in lieu of losing your son, Ian, who we want to hear about, a very special person in the lives of many now, not just in your life, thank God, but you've really done an incredible job of spreading his story. One of the things we really were touched about in hearing and reading Sunny's story was why this all came about for you. Why did you write this book? Why did you start this whole movement, if you will?
It was really about speaking out. It was the night before the funeral. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't sleep. I had held a lot of young women who wore long black dresses in my arms at the wake, and young men that cried like little boys, and they were Ian's friends. And they wanted to know what happened to Ian. And we were telling them we're going to wait for the toxicology report. But we knew. You see, the doctors told us to tell people that Ian died of an aneurysm or a heart attack. And as I laid there in the middle of the night, I knew I wasn't going to be able to get up the next day and go to the funeral. I knew I couldn't put one foot in front of each other. And I was panicking, and I woke up my husband and I said, Larry, I can't do this. I can't go. And he held me, and we cried, and he fell off to sleep. And then I had a vision. I actually visualized speaking out. So I woke him up again, and I said, Larry, I want to speak out. And he immediately said yes. I said, if this is happening to us, it's happening to other families, and nobody's talking about it. And I never lied about my son. He was a good kid. He made an unhealthy decision to use drugs. And I wasn't ashamed of him.
Wow. I mean, love the vision part, but we really admire your vision to speak out, and you've been doing it now for a long time. Can you tell us what happened to Ian when you look back?
What happened to Ian?
Yeah.
Oh, it started with a cigarette, a sip of beer, and some pot.
And what age was he around the cigarette starting?
8th to 9th grade. 8th grade. The reason I found out a lot of this, I smelled the tobacco on him, and of course I read him the Riot Act. You're smoking, Ian. And he said, well, I just tried it. Well, his friends came to visit a lot after Ian died, and what I would really do is listen. And it's interesting what you hear when you just listen. And I would just let them talk and talk and talk and maybe just ask one question. And I asked one young man, I remember Ian smoking tobacco in the 8th grade, but I'm trying to figure out what other drugs he started with. And he says, Mrs. Katz, that's when he smoked tobacco, sipped beer, and did some pot. So that was the 8th grade.
That was all in 8th grade.
Yeah.
You feel like that was the real start
absolutely.
of everything for Ian.
And there was a lot of cover-up with this tobacco, the big red gum, the perfume, the cologne they wear, and so on and so forth.
Were there any signs at the time of, are there any, I know you talk about these
The
signs, the telltale ones?
Well, he had a drop in grades. It was interesting. In Ian's sophomore year, I was taking a course at work, and I was a manager, and I needed to understand the signs of drug use in the workplace. And they're similar to in a home or in a school or whatever. And I'm looking at this long PowerPoint, and I see drop in grades, withdrawal. Well, Ian would come home and just go to his room, no big hugs anymore. There were arguments. He didn't want to do his chores. And there were just so many things. He was changing, and I knew in my gut there was something different. And, of course, I had the conversation with him. And I wasn't really satisfied. So I decided to look around. And I looked in his room. I looked in his drawers. They're my drawers, too. And I didn't see anything, and I didn't hear anything. So I decided to take him to the doctors for an assessment, because I see these changes. And my job as a parent was to keep Ian safe. And I just wanted to rule it out. I just wanted to make sure he wasn't making unhealthy decisions. So we arrived at the doctor's office, and it was awkward to ask the doctor to do a drug test, a urine test. So I came home and I asked the doctor if he could check the specimen Ian gave the doctor. And he said, "Mrs. Katz, it's gone. I can't do that." And I said, "Well, what can I do?" And I suggested that I told him all the different signs I was seeing. And he said, "Ask him to give you his morning urine as a follow-up to the exam." So that day, Ian came home from school, and I said, "The doctor wants a specimen of your urine as a follow-up to the exam. And I have a container in the bathroom. You can give it to me in the morning." So I waited outside, and he came out, and I said, "May I have the container?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Ian, why won't you give me the specimen?" He said, "Tomorrow, Mom, tomorrow." So the next day came, and he popped out of the bathroom, and he gave me this container, and all I did was look him in the eye, and I knew it wasn't his. Moms knew.
Mm-hmm. So he was lying about it.
Now he's covering up. Now
right.
He's lying, he's deceiving, and that's signs of drug use. So I just let him go off to school, and I called the doctor, and I said, "I think he switched his urine." And that was, at that time, it was very difficult for him to accept that. He didn't think Ian could do this. Mm-hmm. So we had a little argument, and I said, "Well, what can we do?" I said, he said, "All right, bring him up. We'll get him tested on the spot." And I asked him also to test the morning urine that Ian gave me. Because if he did this, he had a problem.
Right.
So the morning urine was tested and the afternoon was tested.
So all you were on top of this.
You were really, it's amazing. And this is not just now, this is 20 years ago when this wasn't so popular.
I was dead set against marijuana. It tested positive for marijuana. All those signs I saw, the withdrawal, the drop in grades, the arguments, so many things were changing, and he needed professional help, and he did receive it for 3 months. He had frequent urine tests, and we thought the problem all went away.
Because
his behavior was better, his grades came up, and he fell in love with a girl in his junior year. He's looking towards college. He was an athlete. I drive past his lacrosse field, and I used to think, he's not doing drugs. He's playing lacrosse.
Right.
I'm feeling really comfortable. But some people who use drugs disguise and hide. Mm-hmm. And I think they get better at doing it. It wasn't every day. I would think it would pop up in my house because I looked for it. But when kids in teenage years especially go to sleepovers, you may have the rules in your house, but maybe that parent doesn't. Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't check. Maybe, they don't check the backpacks and so on. So, and Ian frequently slept over other people's homes. And there are other opportunities.
Yes, all the time. Yeah. Do you think he ever, after the rehab or the therapy for the 3 months, do you ever think he went off it, or truly went off it, or was it just to stay and he went back on it relatively soon after?
I think he went off it. Mm-hmm. And then
that was the change in behavior.
That was the change. And then in his junior year, he tried, he did. I could see we set the boundaries, so on and so forth. And I think but then he fell off. He had 2 sets of friends. He had athletic friends, although that doesn't exclude athletes from drinking and smoking. But he had goals. He wanted, to continue his sports. His girlfriend, wasn't a drug user. In fact, she broke up with him in the senior year. She gave him an ultimatum, either me or the marijuana. And he broke up with the most beautiful girl in school, inside and out. That's how powerful marijuana is.
So this was just marijuana at this point. And then what happened? When did it
Went
change?
off to college.
Went off to college.
Where there's no supervision. And I believe there's a cell. I've been told there's a cell of drug dealers around every college in the country because they know the students have no supervision and money and credit cards. And they're targets.
So you think they're coming around to the colleges and getting them there, and then the kids are predisposed because of what they've tried before they got there?
I've heard it from students themselves.
They tell you.
Kids, they tell me. I have 20 years of emails and letters and conversations and discussions with kids, and they tell me. Some kids drop out of college because of the drug use. Their roommates or they're on their dorm floor, there's a mess, and they come home.
But Ian reached out to you from college, didn't he, when
Eventually.
things took a turn?
Eventually.
When was that? That was sophomore year? Or?
Well, in sophomore year, there were 3 boys. And heroin comes in little packets. It could be snorted or smoked. There were 3 boys in the dorm. And there was another boy. His name was Mike, and he was a heroin addict. And he was also a student in the school. And he went 5 blocks away to find drugs at this particular house. And they were given to Mike for free to go back to the college to find new customers. And those 3 boys were there one night, and one got scared, one got sick, and Ian got hooked. And 5 months later, Ian called his biological dad and begged for help. He said, "Dad, I'm snorting heroin for 5 months, and every time I stop, it's like having the flu, 20 times the strength of the flu, and my body hurts. And first it was once a day, then it was 5 times a day, and I can't stop. Please come and help me. But don't tell Mommy and Larry."
So the courage to speak comes in again.
He always came to me when he was sick, but he didn't want to tell us. In a way, I think he protected me, and he was ashamed, and
even
there's
though he
nothing
had
to be
confided everything in you all those years, talked about all those things you'd been through together, this was one thing he couldn't come to you. Isn't that amazing? The relationship.
Well, I was the tougher parent, too. And he just didn't want to disappoint us.
Right.
And it's really important to keep the conversation and tell your kids, no matter what you do, if you make a mistake, you can come to me. I might not like what you do, but you can always come to me. But eventually he did, and he did come back to me the summer before he died. He just, arms open, he needed my help. He had relapsed again. His father put him in a rehab, and then he didn't tell his father that he checked himself out after 3 days. It was a 30-day rehab because he didn't think he was like the other kids in the rehab or the adults in the rehab. Couldn't identify, and he went back to school, and that's when his biological dad broke the silence.
And called you?
Called me. And I was on the phone, and my face is as pale as a ghost when he was telling me. And Larry walked in my office and said, "What's the matter?" I said, "My son is snorting heroin." I said, "My son's going to die."
You knew?
We went to hell and back. He came home on my doorstep, relapsed after going through the finals with honors.
Just still being successful.
With honors from the university, but he said he had the flu. And by then I'm studying Al-Anon. I'm taking a quick study. I'm getting my PhD in addiction. When your child is using drugs, you do everything. You learn. And that's why I tell parents to find out everything your child is being exposed to. Even if you think your child will never do drugs, knowledge is power, and find out everything, and find out the signs and the changes and everything you can.
And what's out there.
And what's out
Just
there.
know.
Everything.
Okay.
Everything. lock up your meds, do this, that, and the other thing. His girlfriend said he did take medications too, which was never could understand that because we never had them in the house. We took aspirin, Tylenol. So he came home, and that's when I got him into a program, and my son came back to me, and we'd have conversations, and we'd go play tennis until we couldn't see the ball anymore at night. And when he went into the program, my husband and I were there the first day with the conversation. And now listen to what a 20-year-old young man has to do because he got addicted to drugs. The counselor said to Ian, you have to take one day at a time. You have to do an AA program, and you have to come here 3 times a week. And you have to have a urine test, and you cannot have a beer. And Ian turned to me and said, Mom, I'm always going to have a beer with my friends. And I said to the counselor, if he has a beer, could he go back to the drug? Could he overdose? Could he die? And he said, yes, Ian, you can't, one day at a time.
So it's everything. It's if it's one thing, it's all things.
Bring him right back. So Ian once again said, I'm always going to have a beer with my friends. And just then he looked in my eyes and he said, Mom, it's not your fault. It's not Dad's. It's not Larry's, his stepfather. He said, I take responsibility. Mom, I messed up. Mom, I'm unlucky. Mom, there's a smorgasbord of drugs at school. If you don't have the money, they give it to you for free, and then you're hooked. Mama, I'm unlucky. Unlucky.
So he wasn't really at the point of admitting to the...
Oh, he agreed to do the program.
He did.
Oh, yeah. And that's the summer my son came back.
Oh, so you had that time with him.
Yeah, I had 3.5 good months. Good months. And then he slipped. Relapse is part of the recovery.
Had he gone back to college at that stage?
No, he transferred his credit so he could commute from home to school.
Okay.
And he was doing really good, 3.5 months. And he
Not
was
have
not
that pressure.
Right. And 9 days into school, he relapsed, and he told us that night. And I wanted to take him to the hospital. He said no. It was all set to go into a long-term program. And by this doctor, and he wanted to see this particular doctor. The reason he didn't go into a rehab when he came home from school, because I brought him to my doctor's, and he gave him a detox drug right in the office after the doctor said he had to be in the hospital, and also he had to go into a rehab. But Ian refused to go to a rehab when he was in the doctor's office. So the doctor came out writing a prescription once again for a detox drug. And so he detoxed at home on his own. And that kind of spoiled his chances to going into a long-term program at that time when he was withdrawing from heroin. So he had a second chance. And then he relapsed. And so that night when he sent his girlfriend home, he came upstairs and he said, I'm sorry, Mom.
He's a good boy.
Never did I think he would go downstairs after he gave me a hug and said, I love you. And do it one more time. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, his dog, Sonny, climbed 4 flights of stairs from Ian's bed to my bed and tried to wake me up.
He knew something was wrong.
He knew something was wrong. And Ian's words rocked me to sleep that night. It was the best night's sleep I had in 5 months since I first found out that he was snorting heroin at college. So I pushed the dog away, and I got up for my morning run, and that's when I found him. I'd gone downstairs and did it one more time.
Fast forward, we've come a long way, and you have used this unbelievable story and tragedy and for incredible good to help other people. And can you tell us about this? I mean, we can see where it came from, this program, but now what actually is it? What do you do for these kids now?
Well, my priest wanted me to speak in church. We had a huge forum, 250 people came out. It's the heart of what we do. It's called the Courage to Speak presentation. It's Ian's story. And his principal asked me to speak, a health class teacher that I used to play tennis with. I spoke to juniors for 12 years in a row, and I received feedback from every one of them on an index card, and I learned so much about kids and pain and so on and so forth. And I saw
Could
that...
I stop you right there?
Yeah.
Could I hear about what is the pain that they were telling you about?
Well, they didn't know what to do with it. They stuffed it. And I find that children are coping by taking medicine or pot because they don't know what to do. And I ask them to have the courage to speak because it's okay to ask for help. We all have pain. It's how we process that pain and getting it out and talking to 3 to 5 adults in their lives that they could share their secrets with. Just getting it out is healing. But children don't feel that they can do that for some reason. And I remember with my friend's health class teachers class, they wrapped themselves around the hallway to see the psychologist and social worker after I left, and they were telling us this program is really good. Kids are speaking out, they're talking. Said I gave them permission to share their feelings and have the courage to speak because it is okay to ask for help. So then we realized that after I spoke, the children and even the parents wanted more because we'd speak to the children separately and parents at night. So we decided to work with the school system and bring in experts in drug prevention and develop drug prevention education curriculum for elementary, middle, and high school, and a parenting course called Courageous Parenting 101. And that was developed within a 6-year period. And then, remember I told you about Sonny trying to tell me about Ian?
Yes.
I was sitting on the deck one day, and my girlfriend was there, a day like today. And I said if Sonny could talk, he would have a lot to say, and a light bulb went off. And I wanted the educational tool for children.
Here it is, Sonny's story.
So Sonny narrates the book. He tells Ian's story. It's an educational tool.
It's a fabulous book.
Did you read it at the dinner table?
Yes, we did. We read it, and we have, this is Sonny, the dog. And, you know, we all know what it feels like from a mom, or we don't all know, but we can hear certainly the heartache. But, you know, the man's best friend is right here, and was his best friend, so how clever.
He knew everything.
And so approachable, so understandable from that perspective.
It's a part of all our curriculum.
There was something that you said at a time when we talked about this book, about how, you know, we really address very young age about stranger danger. And how we really need to discuss this. Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Well, we talk to children about not talking to strangers at a very early age. Moms, dads, we're in the grocery store and a stranger comes over to our child and the child is in the basket. And it's an opportunity to teach your child, don't talk to strangers. Didn't we all do this as a parent?
Absolutely.
Okay. They go to kindergarten and first grade and they get good touch, bad touch, stranger danger, all kinds of curriculum on the topic. So by the time they're 7, 8, or 9 and somebody says, come here, little boy, come here, little girl, their heart goes like this and they run home and they tell mommy and daddy. When a child at 7 or 8 is asked to smoke this with me, try this pill, what do you think they think? They think it's fun. There's been a study. They think it's fun because that's what they see. They see
7th or 8th grade.
7th, 8th grade.
Yeah.
They see drug commercials since they've been Rugrats. It's very subliminal. So they take a pill because it makes them feel better. They have seen ads on TV around the Super Bowl that it's fun. They may have seen parties where adults are drinking and having a great time. It's very subliminal, and they see that from the time they're very little, so they think this is fun.
And they're watching
because the work isn't done. Drug prevention education. There are 1/3 of parents talk to their children about not using drugs. That
Only
means
1/3.
1/3. That means 2/3 of the kids coming to school every day. They don't have that conversation at home, and many, many schools do not have drug prevention education. So where do they get it?
It's one of the other stunning things that you said before, which I found one of the questions that you asked them is, do you think a good friend
will give you drugs?
Will give you drugs.
And they go.
And they, oh. What do they all say when you say that to them?
A lot of them say no, but
Never.
a good friend a good friend can make a mistake.
Anybody.
Anybody. And as they get older, they can commit a crime and sell you drugs. A best friend. And that's what happened to Ian. That's what happened to Ian.
Right.
At every stage, at every
Everybody
level.
thinks if you surround yourself by the right people, but that's just not the
Younger
case.
children make mistakes, and if you find your child is using drugs at a very early age, at between 8th and 9th grade, don't go crazy. It's an opportunity to talk and set the boundaries and ask them why and get them to talk. They're using for a reason. And if they ask you, did you use drugs, ask them, why do you ask that question? And look at them and wait for the answer. Well, somebody offered me a drug. They're trying to figure out if you did it, it's okay, or if a friend has asked them to use drugs, and if mom or dad used it, it's okay. They're asking for permission. There's a reason why they're asking. So just throw that question back. It's the hardest question to be asked, I know. And it's your gut instinct whether you're going to ask it, whether you're going to answer it the way you think you should or the way you think it's most beneficial. And it's a very, very difficult question. Mm-hmm.
So the courage to speak isn't just it's for kids at a young age, it's for kids at an age if they get into something in trouble, but it's really also teachers, parents. I mean, we can all benefit. This is a program that you actually give to the teachers and the social workers?
We have elementary, middle, and high school curriculum, and it's all about healthy lifestyles, healthy decisions. Also, it's about setting boundaries for parents, not enabling, overcoming denial, know what enabling and denial is, and how we all play a role in that. So it's very. There are about 8 lessons for 4th through 6th grade. For middle school, there are 15 lessons, and that's spread within 2 years. And for high school, there's about 11 lessons. And parents have a 5-session course to keep their children safe.
So parents could innocently be, I hear from a lot of people, well, I'm an adult. I can have a drink. I don't want to be curtailing my activity, whether that's not modeling behavior or not. But that's not really what this is saying here. That's not really what we're addressing.
I think children are watching your actions and so on and so forth. So they see you on a Friday night and you see you have down a bottle of wine. They're watching that. Mm-hmm. You're an adult. You're allowed to drink. I'm not telling what parents should do, but I've heard parents tell me they just emptied out a liquor cabinet these precious years they're growing up. Because your kids will be curious and they'll have friends over, just like the medicine cabinet. They'll go to the liquor cabinet and they'll pour water in the bottles and you think nobody ever touched it, even if you looked at it. They put pills, phony pills into the they take a different pill that look alike as a replacement. They will do that. They're very clever because they do risky things. This is part of growing up. They're experimenting. And I don't like to use the word experimenting when it comes to drugs. Nowadays, children, there's too much of a risk in experimenting. And it also condones the use. Oh, Johnny's just experimenting. Mm-hmm. Don't take the risk. Experimenting is not something that should be looked at as a simple thing because the drugs are not.
Right.
So looking back, when you're talking to a teenager or your son or daughter or whatever else, what's the best way to talk to them about drugs? If you think they have a problem or when you know they have a problem, how would you address them?
Just get them to open up about their feelings. It's all about, that's why children use most of the time. I ask children why do you think kids use drugs? And they say stress, peer pressure, pain. My husband Larry asked 300 middle school kids in the 7th grade, how many of you have pain? 300 hands went up.
Huh.
And all the adults were just so shocked.
Just pain in terms of not knowing how to deal with life or
life
some
is
aspect.
filled with ups and downs. But the problem is that some children are coping with medications and pot and alcohol. But to end this on a very good note, the majority of children do not use drugs.
I love that, because all you hear all the time is everybody's out there, everybody's doing it, it's becoming an epidemic, and I don't want to, we want to be aware to the kids that are, we don't want to lose anybody. But what is the percentage of that?
I'm not the expert on it, but not the majority.
Not the majority.
But the children think the majority of children use drugs.
Right,
and that's
perception.
dangerous. It's the perception, and that's dangerous. And it's our role as a parent to tell them the majority of children don't.
Do not.
And it's good for schools to do the surveys to get the actual use in the school. The children take the surveys, and then the surveys are reported to the parents at a family night or a discussion night based on that. And then they implement a good drug prevention program, because when maybe a third of kids, or 33, 32, 38% of kids use drugs, that affects the children that don't.
It's like that group mentality?
No, it causes stress when you have children around you and you decide never to use drugs, but your friend does. What does that do to the friend? It puts them under stress. They're concerned about them. So every child, in a way, is at risk. So we want a healthy environment for our children. We want them to make healthy decisions.
So you mentioned that we need to have these adult identifiers, these people that we can contact, that we can speak to, have the courage to speak with.
Well, hopefully it's a mom and a dad, a family member, maybe a mom's friend, or a best friend's mom that a child can confide in, a school counselor. There are assets in our child's life that we could find, and finding a mentor in a child's life is very important.
Is a coach a good person?
Absolutely. There's a laundry list of people that they could go to, and hopefully it's the mom and dad. But as they get older, sometimes in the high school years, you find they just want that separation, and they get a little quiet. Some kids do. I know when I didn't. I came home and I was a blabbermouth. My mother said I was a blabbermouth. But if you have a child that's quiet and you have to ask questions, that's another thing. Ask them questions to open up. And when you put them to bed at night, what good things happen in your life today and what not so good things, get them to talk. Go on a trip. It's amazing.
Go on a trip. Not just the good things, but hear about everything.
And
be open.
Shut the phones off and all the electrical equipment, and have dinner together.
Eye time.
With all that. I mean, these are simple things that we could make, those tiny minor changes.
Well, Ginger, you have, I know, touched millions and millions of people. I know that where you are in Norwalk, the drug abuse has gone down, and that is probably a large part to all the speaking and awareness that you've created up there, and we just can't thank you enough. We're trying to do the same everywhere, and hopefully that's what we've done by getting Ian's story out there, and you have the courage to speak to us. We can't thank you enough.
Hope we can replicate it in your community.
We hope so.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.